Good morning. You'll see some stuff before this. I'm in very good spirits today. Got some great news about my mom. So JP's going to work all that beforehand. So we are going to, today we're going to do this will be the first part. I'm sorry, doggone it. It's like I'm in a time machine, huh, JP? This is going to be, you'll actually see the stuff about mom on the one Tuesday. This is the next Tuesday afterwards. So now we're starting a 4-part series. I would say, yeah. So we're going to have 4 parts to this one because we got into a lot of stuff that's really good for out there for training on this 6S Padmount. It was at a campground, and today we're going to start with we're going to do an examination, a thorough examination, and talk really a lot about the Padmount transformers. We're going to talk about gloves and safety. And then we're going to actually get into the test. And so we'll have 4 parts on this one. So the one today is the first one, where we're going to go into examination of the Padmount, a lot more information about that, some of the information you can see on them. And then we're going to get into the actual testing part of it, and that'll be the next 3 that we do. Okay. And today we're going to do a really good inspection of the Padmount, talk about information off of it, safety about it. Then we're going to talk about PPE and gloves and safety with that. And then the next 3 will be actually going into the test. So we'll go ahead and roll this thing. And then as we get into it.
Oh, you ain't prayed yet.
Oh, doggone it. Yeah, I just did on the last one. And yeah, okay. All right. Yeah. that is just one of the many reasons I need JP. Okay, so yeah, keep me straight on what time I'm in right now. So, okay, so let's pray real quick. Father, what awesome news I got yesterday, but they're not seeing it until after that with my mom, and it's just, it's just incredible. I so many times want to give something to you, and then I have the audacity to think that I can do a better job than you can with it. So I try and take it back from you after I give it to you, and then how many times do I try and take the wheel from you when you tell me clearly not to lean on my own understanding, but to have my faith in you to keep my path straight and level. So, Lord, thank you so much for what you did for my mom. She is just so incredibly over the moon. And, of course, she's going to tell a lot of people about it, and I am too, that now she doesn't have to have surgery. And it's like I'm talking to a different person. She had gotten pretty down. So, Father, thank you again so much for what you did for her. And, Father, I lift Angela up, talked to her yesterday. She has serious issues, but I'm just going to lift her up while I have the chance. And anyone else out there, I hate to think that I didn't pray for someone, I maybe left them off, but this health stuff is so rough on us because we have to put our faith in doctors and nurses, and it's one thing to put our faith in you, but now we have to put our faith in people that we know are flawed as well. So we can just ask you to guide them and ask you to guide their hands and help them see what needs to be seen so they can treat us correctly. But in the end, there really is the great physician, and that's you. And just thank you so much for the stories that we can tell of incredible healing. And Lord, the other part of it is just putting it in your hands and not ours, and, wanting things to happen on John's time. And John's got a pea brain and doesn't really know the best thing, but you do, Lord. And so in those times when it doesn't happen on our time, please give us the comfort that you can give that goes beyond all understanding, and so that we can wait for you. We wait upon you, Father, and in the end we will mount up like eagles. And so, Father, thank you again. Thank you so much for the time today. Please, safe travels for everyone going to and from the Auburn Meter School. There are so many people that count on those folks that are going to be traveling back and forth. And leaders of Christian homes are so critical these days. And we're seeing so much chaos in this world with Ukraine and everything that's going on. And we're actually seeing persecution now of Christians over there. So we're seeing the things that you tell us are coming, and we know they're coming, but it's still sad to see, and it hurts. So, Father, be with those folks. And as always, thank you so much for what your son did, or I couldn't even pray to you right now. So all of these things I ask and say, according to the will of the one who paid it all, my precious brother, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thanks, JP. So, we're going to get started with this success. I'll stop and butt in like I always do, and we'll get rolling.
So now Brian and I are going to test a pad mount here, and so we're going to go through that same inspection process that we go through, but we can learn a few things before we really start cracking into anything, okay? So looking here on the outside of this pad mount transformer, we can see it's 150 kVA. We can see what our system's going to be, so we'll know that already before we get in there. It's a 12208Y. We see that it says R temp on here, which means it's got a different rating on the oil in here because of how close it is to the building right here. Now, as far as security on these pad mounts,
go ahead. Okay, so a couple of things real quick. The SS is for stainless steel. I didn't mention that. I don't know that I did later. I don't think I did that, JP.
Don't think so.
Okay, so SS is stainless steel. The other is, you remember how your parents or people would always say, don't do as I do as I say. Well, you see me, and in a minute I'm going to grab the lock here as well. I should have gloves on. Sorry that was not a very good example of how to work safely out there in the field. I'm doing all this, I'm touching on the transformer and everything, and that's that's definitely not the way to do that, folks. So I should have my gloves on. And we'll talk about it in a minute too. The level of protection depends. It's always different at your utility, by the way. So always defer to your utility. But remember, those are the minimums. So you can always go even safer if you want to, or go with higher rating things. But at the minimum, I should have had a distribution level gloves on here, my 1,000-volt gloves, if nothing else, to be pointing and touching on that, and then in a minute holding that lock. And you'll see that. So again, and this is another instance, don't do as I do as I say. Thanks.
you've got a secondary lock here on the outside, right? And the secondary lock, which goes along with the protection of it, you don't have to have your primary protection on when you're just working with this secondary lock and this secondary level of security, all right? Now, once I get past that into the primary, I need to have my primary gloves on and be sleeved up because I'm going on the inside of it. But if I just want to take this padlock off of here, then that's secondary, so I can take it off without having all my primary gloves and sleeves and protection on, okay? So we can take this off here, and then we'll come around here over to the side, and we're going to take a look. We'll take a look at the meter and stuff on here. Now, typically you're going to see this a lot on pad mounts. You're going to see the meter can that mounted on the outside of the transformer, right? And some of the things you can see right away by looking at this, and I like, what they've done here is they'll actually put a sticker on the outside of it the last time it was tested. So we've already pre-stickered it. You can see right here saying that we're going to test it today. So you can actually put stickers on there. So if someone, an engineer from the office or anybody else comes out here to look at it, they can see and they'll know right off the bat when the last time this was tested, okay? You'll also notice, if you can see it up in here, and I know JP's good enough with the camera, you'll also notice in there, it helps a lot, you can actually go ahead and put the multiplier in there. So if the multiplier, if that multiplier says 40 right there, which is what it says, multiplier 40, you can see that CT is 200 to 5. And remember, we talk about multipliers, which are so important to us, right? Because that's how you actually bill a customer. So if you take the 200 and divide it by 5, you get the 40. So it's 40 to 1. Remember, we're doing all of our measurements on the secondary side. So once we do those measurements and everything, to actually bill a customer, you've got to multiply by these multipliers because we've stepped it down with the transformers, right? So our step down current or potential transformers step down our currents or our voltages to testing levels, which make it safer for us. But then when we get ready to bill the customer, we've got to take it back up to actual numbers, and to do that we use these multipliers. So you hear us talking about multipliers all the time and how important they are. If you mess up a multiplier, you're multiplying by 40 there. There's a big difference between multiplying by 40 or multiplying by 400, right? So a typing error or getting something wrong, that can end up being a big change, either an overbilling or underbilling, and it usually is big numbers. So we always say how important those multipliers are, because that's big numbers when you're the difference between multiplying by 400 or 40, okay? That's a factor of 10, so that will really affect somebody's bill, right?
And also, you know, I mentioned about the entry. Again, eyes and ears of utility, right? That's the meter tech. So what you're doing there is you really don't want to assume or trust anything except these and this, right? So yeah, I see the stickers on there, but you'll see in a minute, confirm that once you look on the inside, because I mentioned, it could be high. Well, also remember, usually the default on people's billing systems is 1. So if it never got entered in there, it's going to be 1 instead of 40. That's quite a difference in the bill, right? So always check those numbers, check it with what you see on the inside of the transformer. But also, I say this, and I don't know how many people actually do it. Double check with what's been entered on back at the office, right? So you might just write that down or confirm and just ask someone when you come in after you've been testing, or maybe have a little process where you send it to someone, and and your supervisor, foreman, however it is, it's different, the size of the utilities and the personnel you have, but someone checks and just with what was actually entered on the system, because those are big mistakes. The 2 biggest ones we found when we did that study, you've heard us say it at the meter schools before, we our largest municipal in the state, we did tests with thousands of their meters, and those were the 2 biggest costly errors were wiring errors and billing multiplier errors, because if it defaults to 1 and it's supposed to be 40, that's literally a factor of 40 on the bill. So that's big time. And so you want to check it there, and you want to check it, make sure, don't trust the stickers or anything. Trust your eyes on what you see it says on the side of that CT, okay?
So you can see, I really like the way they've got the sticker there. So if somebody walks up and sees that, they've got a sticker here on the side to even see where they've tested right away, okay? So Brian, now let's go ahead and start our inspection. So when you inspect a pad mount versus, say, the overheads, what are you looking for here, Brian?
You can come over here, look around it, look for oil coming out. You can also smell the oil. It's got a very distinct smell to it.
Big time.
And you can just look around, make sure there's no gaps in the transformers or anything like that. I mean, make sure the ground's not settled, where that transformer sunk down in the ground, or anything like that. Holes where groundhogs, I've seen several where groundhogs have went under there,
That's right.
Wintertime, keeping warm, the pad mount, it attracts so many things. Snakes, I mean.
Oh, yeah.
Anything,
yeah.
If it can get in there, it's going to get in there in the wintertime, and you never know what you might open up and be in a pad mount.
Got that right. I've seen snakes in them. Now, and also you'll see them even there. You can see where it's moved on the pad, and then you might want to look to see, did it get hit by a car? Did something hit it? Or, I mean, I've actually seen them where they're jacked up on the pad itself. Right. So what he's saying is critical, right? It's a little similar to the pole, but it's different because we're dealing with a pad mount now, not a pole. So you're looking for the same things he talked about, settling or gaps and holes around that pad, all right? That pad. Or maybe it's sitting cockeyed on the pad like it's maybe taking a hit or something. You'll just want to note all of that, and that's where the meter tech is the eyes and ears of the utility out there on a more regular basis than a lineman would be.
You wonder, how could a possum get inside a pad mount transformer? It happens. Had guys tell me possums. I've seen snakes, mice, other stuff. Haven't seen a possum yet, but as he said, I mean, burrowing underneath, and you've gone up before. I've gone up to them before, and there's big gaps all around them. I'm telling you, that's a nice warm place to hang out. Nice place to raise a family is up inside there. They don't know any better. You will see all kinds of things in there. So always do the inspections.
What about alligators?
Ooh, I haven't seen alligators in pad mounts, but I have seen alligators. I just haven't seen them in that. Another story. Yeah.
I'm going to come out there and make this installation, and he may never come back to that thing, right? But the eyes and ears out there, fellas like this right here, who can go out there and say, whoa, I've noticed this, you might want to send the crew out, okay, and check it out. So remember, meter techs are the eyes and ears of the utility on a very regular basis, so they're counting on us to report this stuff, okay? So you look for gaps, just like Brown said. You're looking for holes or sinking, like he said. You're looking for it jacked up on the pad, and so far, I don't see anything. Do you?
Hinges on the door, on the front of it. You want to look at those. If they're missing bolts or something like that, don't open it. I mean, because then you take the risk on not being able to get it closed, or something, the back of the bolt, the nut or something like that falling off into the pad mount itself, and
that's a good point. And plus, you're thinking, why are they missing?
Exactly.
Why would you have those pins out of the hinges? That's going to start that Rolodex going in our head of, right? And that's a great point.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah. This is a different animal than the pole, obviously, but there's stuff too you just sometimes don't think about. If you see those pins missing, has there been tampering going on? Has someone, you don't know why would they be missing? The other is, remember, think about it from a safety standpoint. You go to open the door and the hinges are missing, and that piece of metal starts falling around and banging around on the inside that transformer. That is definitely not a good thing. So if you see the pins missing, that is a chance to step back and go, wait a minute. Be very, very careful at that point. The other is, we talk about, how you cringe when you see kids sitting up on transformers and things like that. Well, remember, you get in some of these transformers sometimes, and you can get rust and a lot of stuff up underneath the bottom of these, depending on where you are and water levels and different things that have happened over the years. If that stuff starts falling down in there, now you maybe have caused something in there, so that now, that's why it was so bad for me to be reaching around touching on that thing. You never know what has now become energized because of metal or different things going on the inside of that. Never assume, as I just did in my pea brain, touching around on it, that is safe. I mean, it's right there on the front. Look at that, big warning, right there. And here I'm going and touching and grabbing the locks and stuff. Don't assume that it's safe. The outside of it is safe, and all the danger's on the inside. The danger is not always just on the inside. It can also be on the outside.
And if you see something like that on the doors, don't risk it, especially if you're out there by yourself trying to get that thing back up on there, or getting it off or getting it back on, okay? So right now we're at the point where we've looked at it, and we think everything looks okay. So now we're about to go into that primary level. So now Browland's he's sleeved up here. He has his face shield on here, right? And he's also gonna put his primary gloves on, all right, to go up in there. I guess we should also mention the difference between these gloves, right? So we're noticing here, so these are primary gloves, and these aren't primary gloves, are they, Browland?
No.
And how do we know the difference?
Tell the difference in the thickness, and also by how it's tested.
Exactly.
And everything like that. The class 2s,
That's exactly
and,
right.
The max use on volts right here, you can see this down there, and then you can see his are just 1,000.
See how these are 1,000?
These are 17,000.
These are 17,000. So that's the difference in the gloves. So when we're talking about primary gloves, I've got to make sure I don't get rolling too fast myself and just gloss over things. I mean, this is for training, right? So there's different levels of gloves. So mine aren't primary gloves. So I should not, and would not, and don't y'all do it, go up in there with these kind of gloves going up in primary stuff, all right, like that. So when you have that rating, and your utility company will usually tell you that. We're just pointing out there's differences in the gloves, and these are primary gloves, and he's also sleeved up just for the added protection, and he's also got the shield on, okay, to go up in there. All right?
Okay, let's talk gloves for a second. Critical, right? That's the direct point that us meter techs start making contact with stuff. So obviously you have different levels and classifications of gloves, okay? You start out, you got the class 00, class 0, class 1, class 2, class 3, right? So the different classifications, and I made myself some notes here, and JP and I looked them all up to get them all on there. So the class double aught gloves are 500 volt, and the class aught gloves are 1,000 volt. You may say it differently where you are, but we look at those as low voltage gloves or distribution gloves, okay? Because you're just all you're talking about is up to 1,000 volts. Now, when you get up to the next ones, the 1 and 2s, now you're talking about the 1 is rated for 7,500 volts, and the 2 is rated, which you're seeing here, which is 17,000 volts. Those would be considered high voltage gloves for us. Okay, so we call those high voltage gloves. Now, when you start getting higher above that, I know back in my switchgear days, when you talk 26.5 for a voltage, they might call that sub-transmission, but once you got up 36, then they would call that, transmission. It depends on the utility too, where I was, traveling around the country then. Some people would still call that sub until they got up over 40,000 volts. But I know that the class 3 and 4 gloves for us are considered transmission gloves. They're rated respectively 26.5 and 36,000. So depending on where you are and what you're about to work with, that is the differentiation. Like we were saying there, the lock the locks on the outside where we were, those locks and everything, that's considered, low voltage. So until you actually went in, and it could be different at your utility. So as long as I had the gloves on, but I would need to have at least those Class A gloves on that I had. You saw that I had. But if you were going to actually get past that, once you got past that padlock, in other words, and we're going to talk about it here in a little bit, that pintle bolt. Once you got to the pintle bolt, and from that point on, once you actually got on and loosened the pintle bolt, you needed to have on at least the Class 2s, which would be the 17,000. Okay, so but it could be different at your utility. So I'm sure with all the safety measures, they're going to tell you what it is, but that's just an understanding for folks that are maybe new into this, that are watching it, that there are definitely classifications for the gloves for what point you are in the system and on the circuit, right? So the outside of that pad mount transformer, your utility could very well be different as far as glove rating for when you go inside. Also, the other part of the PPE, the sleeves, a face shield, safety glasses. You may on the outside, you may only need safety glasses, a hard hat, and the Class A gloves. Okay, and out on the outside, if you have a CT can out there, and then since you're working with the lower voltages and currents, right, because we're CTing it down, then you might still be okay with that. But once you get in there, typically if you're inside pad mounts, most of the time, the one I hear the most out there is you need to have on hard hat, face shield, safety glasses. You need to be sleeved up and have high voltage gloves on. Because remember, we talked about that before. Now, when I'm reaching in there to put on my flexes and I'm getting around those conductors, what am I having to do? I'm having to reach in there. I always talk about, if you can, use the hook of it to let it get around there for you so you're not reaching. I always cringe when I see guys' first move is reaching in with both hands. But if you have the sleeves on, then at least if I see a guy that's sleeved up, I feel better about it. The one I always cringe about is no sleeves and going. So use the hook if you can to not reach in. But if you do, as long as you're sleeved up and you have on the high volt gloves, the high voltage gloves, you have on a face shield and the other. I've had the face shield and stuff protect me last year in a situation. So I can tell you, you need to have the face shield, you need to have the safety glasses, hard hat, you need to have your sleeves, and you need to have your high volt gloves to be reaching up in there. And of course, goes without question, all of your PPE clothing. Okay, thanks.
So what are you working on there? That is did you notice what he just did? This is actually that we were talking about the primary level of security. This is that primary lock, right? This is the pintle lock, which he has. You're going to have you a drill out there to loosen this up. And this is that primary that we talked about. Once he goes past this, now we consider that primary levels, and that's why he has to have on the protection he has versus what I've got. So once he opened up and loosened that pintle lock, now we're ready to roll, right? So now he can actually get into it, and that's why you have to have on what he has on. So I would say here at this point, this is just me, you saw it on the inside of that meter right there. You might just do a quick confirmation of, they said out there that the multiplier was 40 in that. Are you confirming that inside there?
Yes.
Right, so you're seeing they are 200 to 5 CTs.
Correct.
So them saying 200 and they got 200 on, when you see they're 200 to 5 CTs, that confirms what we saw on the meter. So while you're there, just do a quick check, because someone could have mislabeled something, right?
Oh yeah.
Okay. You also have these protective sleeves right here.
So I've asked JP to go ahead and put above my head there. So probably because people already in the South are saying bless his heart, but to put a dub above my head, because you just saw me literally going, now you need primary, and I'm sitting there with 1,000 volt Class A gloves and I'm touching the pintle bolt rather. Sorry about that. But anyway, so again, don't do what I do. Do what I say. But as far as the sleeves, here's another instance where when we were out, if they say, if it is, again, eyes and ears of utility, if they're supposed to have sleeves on all of those transformers, they don't, that's another thing to report, okay? And we had gone into it where they were supposed to have sleeves and they didn't have them. And, guys either, for whatever reason, something happened to them, they took them off, didn't put them, forgot them, whatever it is. And some guys, they think it's maybe a pain in the neck, whatever, to fool them. I don't know why, but if it's supposed to have the sleeves on there and it doesn't have them, make a note to put sleeves back on there. Next time you're out, you're in that area, you can stop by and put the sleeves on. But these protective sleeves are a big deal for us because while you're working on one phase, you can leave the sleeves over there and give you just even more added protection on top of the gloves, the sleeves, the hard hat, face shield, safety glasses, okay? But you see that in this case, they had all of them on there, and all of them look good, were in good shape. You also can check them out. Sometimes they look like they're about to fall apart. I mean, literally, sometimes this stuff's been underwater, right? I mean, we know that. So some of this stuff doesn't handle over time and whatever happens to it. So if they need to be changed out, make a note of it. But if it's supposed to have them, make a note of it. And also that's part of your examination, right, is checking to make sure about the sleeves.
It can be over. You see those spade terminals right there, when they get pretty big like that, people will also use these protective sleeves over them right here. See, so you can see that they're covered also with those protective sleeves. Okay.
And when these are on here, I always like to remove them and look to see, make sure that everything's tightened down good, nothing's loose or anything like that, because I mean that stuff over time, the vibration in there can work it loose.
That's exactly right. That's a good point. We know that there's always on any conductors, on any of this, if there's electricity going through there, what is electricity? That AC's pulsing, isn't it, right? So there's always a tiny bit of a vibration in there, and over time, vibration loosens things up. So don't ever assume anything's a tight connection. Always look for loose connections. Don't assume anything. So he's taking the sleeves off. He's being careful to just look, see if he sees anything, and he's looking for any kind of arc. You're looking for any arc marks or anything like that, right?
The other thing, right here, we've got 2 loose wires in here that aren't hooked up to anything.
Right.
And that's something else you want to look at. Why are these disconnected in here and not wrapped up or anything like that?
Good. I was just going to say, not only are they loose in there, but why haven't they put something on the end of that for protection? Why don't they have some kind of, they should have tied the end of that thing up to where it's not bare and just hanging out like that. So that's another good point. If you see anything like that, you might point that out to somebody or take care of it yourself, or both.
There's another one right there.
That's right.
John, if you want to, go ahead and hand me the flex rings and I'll go ahead and hook those up while we're right here.
You got it.
So some good safety, hopefully tips, gloves, the examination of a pad mount. As I said, don't assume the outside of a pad mount is safe, okay? And don't be a knothead like John and start reaching around touching stuff. Don't grab that pedal lock. Don't do any of that stuff without the proper protection on there. And your utility will tell you what that is supposed to be. And so you follow that at least. You can go safer if you want, but at least do what they say because your utility company is watching out for you. They need you there doing this work, so they've set standards. So follow those standards. But never assume the outside. Do your just like we've shown on the poles and everything else. Just do an examination, look for things, make sure that everything's the way that it should be. Look for displaced off of the pad, all of that stuff. But the most important thing is getting home safe to your families. Okay, so be sure and do your job as safely as possible. And taking just a little bit longer. I'm at the point in my career. I don't care how many. I know the utilities 8 years. I don't care how many you get tested in a day. I want you to get home safe to your families. Okay, so and these things might do just that for you. So do some examining, look at things, check your multipliers while you're there, stuff like that. And so going forward, we're going to now get into the testing of this, and the next 3 are going to be the testing of this pad mount here and the CTs. So that's what you're going to see coming up. We'll have one for actually, since we're going to do 3 more, are we going to do 3 more today where we'll have? Yeah. Okay, so we'll have for the 22nd, the 29th, and then 1 more, right? So we'll
whatever day comes out.
Whatever that day comes out, man. I'm the same as you. I couldn't tell you right now.
Yeah.
So we will do those. So if you have any questions or anything, holler at us. Look forward to seeing y'all at the Auburn Meter School. And God bless y'all, and be safe out there, okay?